Okay, everyone, good evening. Tonight's class is going to be a short class. We're just going to complete the final class on the symbiosis of body and soul. This is part four. In the discourse, Lo Yonason tonight's class should be Lezecha Nishmas, Leah Freda, Bas, Chaim, Wolf. May her neshama have a great aliyah. Her yahrzeit was today. Higher and higher and higher and higher. Okay, and let her send down a lot of blessings to her entire family, children, and grandchildren, and everyone for all that they need and all that they want. Fine. Okay, we're holding in chapter 11. I'm going to do chapter 11, chapter 12. Okay, so if you want to know what everything we learned before now, you have 3 classes of about 9 hours to learn, or 10 hours. You can catch up. If you want to learn this class with me, you can do that right now. And I'm not going to do too much explanations because that's going to be another few hours and my eyes are closing on me. But we're going to do it anyways. Let's go. We're going to learn. Okay, the last point we learned was that the relationship of body and soul is that in addition to the fact that through the body, the soul has an elevation because the body challenges the soul and brings forth the depth of the soul. And that's one element. So the soul becomes actualized through the body. But then once the soul is actualized through the body, the soul doesn't need the body anymore. And therefore, the ultimate life, the ultimate state of existence of the soul enjoying its connection to God can be without a body. That's on the superficial level. On a much deeper level, we learn that the greatness of the soul achieves by being in the body is not despite the body, so that the soul overcomes the body, but rather the body itself, once it's refined and once it's purified and once it's governed by the soul, we discover the inherent quality of the body. And once the inherent quality of the body is that God chooses the body. God and choice, as we learned last week, you can listen to it in great length. I'm not explaining it now. Choice comes from the essence, and something that a person chooses with free choice, with real and true free choice, is a deeper connection to a person even than your children. Because your children are connected to you on the level that you are a parent, which is very, 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 very essential and very deep. But there's always the essence before it takes on any expression, even the fact that it is a parent. And on that level, the child doesn't reach. Who does reach? Something you're choosing, because a real free choice comes from I'm saying it's hard to find such choices by a human, by us, but there is such a concept. And when we choose from our essence, our connection to it is, its importance is not it. Its important is that we choose it. And being that the choice is coming from the essence, it's as significant as our essence. Its identity becomes our essence. God chose the body, and then the identity of the body is that it's God's choice. Soul, although the soul also has a choice of God, in the very fact that the soul is a child of God is because God chooses to be a parent and thereby making the soul a child. But as we learned in last class, since the soul has the qualities of being a child, covers on the choice. But in the body, there's nothing there to cover on the choice. The body is no reason for God to love the body. Talking about the body, the Jewish body that God selected to do mitzvot. There is no explanation. There's no value to it. It's only because he chose it. And that is revealed in the body. And via the body, it's discovered in the soul as well. And that's the reason why, based on that, the ultimate elevation of the soul is actually coming from the body. It's not the body challenging the soul so that the soul can bring forth its muscles, but rather the body is actually bringing the soul up to the place where the body is connected to. In that sense, we can understand why the body will forever remain connected. The soul will forever remain connected to the body. And even though there is God forbid, the passing away, the separation of the soul from the body, we know that that's temporary. And eventually all souls come back to bodies to live happily ever after down here below. So just like it is with soul and body, to a similar degree, not exactly, and if you want to understand the difference of it, class number 3 is what you want to listen to, is also the symbiosis and the relationship of Jew and Gentile. Not to the degree that to say, because in that sense, the Gentile would be more the body of the universe, and the Jew is more the soul of the universe. But what we will not say is that the Gentile is plugged in higher than the Jewish people because God chooses. That not, but what we do say is that there is an advantage to the Gentiles because they are rooted in the angels. The souls of the Gentiles are rooted in the angels, and the angels are rooted in the vessels. And to some degree, the vessels are higher than the lights. There is a quality in the vessel higher than the lights, even though the vessel can't operate at all without the light. The vessel needs the lights, but as we discussed last week, the Jewish people are rooted in the lights, not in the vessels. And the lights are far more powerful than the vessels, but yet the vessels that contain the light in their very, very origins of sources originate deeper than where the light comes from. And last week we learned that itself, that the system is that way, is because God built the entire system to reflect body and soul. And since the way he schemed the scheme of our bodies and souls is that he chooses the body and then puts the soul in, and therefore the body has a advantage over the soul in terms of equality, of a connection to God's essence. Same happens with vessels and lights, which thereby translates also that the nations as well have a certain have a certain quality in their soul via the vessels in which they can contribute to the lights. And that's the reason why eventually, even in the days of Mashiach, we learned the more illumination, the more enlightenment, the more blessings that will come to the Gentiles, the more that will increase the experience of the Jewish people as well. And that's the theme of chapter 67 in the Psalms, which we say after Sfirat Omer, because over there it says that Mizmar Shir, the Mizmar, which is related to the song, because of all the good that God will do for the entire world, for all of humanity, like it states later in the Mizmar, Kisishpoit Amem Mishar, that God is going to judge the nations justly, and that's going to produce a great Kiddush Hashem. It's going to create a great sanctification of God's name. That itself is going to bring Elokim Yechaneinu Vivarcheinu. It's going to bring greater grace and greater blessing to Israel. And that's why, so much so, that the Mizmar, the song pertaining to the elevation of the nations, the universal elevation, is going to cause Shir, the song that is the purely song of the Jewish people, the song of the souls. That's the dynamic that we learned till now. Now let's continue a little further. It is known. Chapter 11 over here. This that the soul is willing to go down below to enliven the body is because the soul feels the quality of the body because the body, what did we learn earlier? That the body, because God chooses the body, and again, precisely because there is no quality to the body, but yet it's a choice that he chooses from his essence, not a rational choice, an essential choice. And because he chooses it, that's why the body is superior to soul. Although the body is a clump of bones and meat, and the soul is a piece of God from above. I mean, if you really think quality, there's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to talk about. This is like the gap that exists between them is this is the of the finest quality, and this is of the lowest. It's a piece of mud. So we can only appreciate the depth of this if we first appreciate how nothing the body is. And yet, why would a soul go down to enliven a body? So the sages say it's not willful. God forces the soul to go down into the body. Against your will, you live. There was this person 2 weeks ago, a nuthead, who exploded himself in Palm Springs. Obviously, a very, very sick person. Just 2 weeks ago, there was a guy who blew himself up in Palm Springs next to a fertility center. Why? Because he was upset at fertility, because he feels, this is his opinion, is everybody has their opinion. His opinion on life is that you're not allowed to bring people to live without their consent. So here, you're not allowed to have babies, because these people that are being born have never given their consent to be born. And therefore, by what right do you have to bring them, to make them, to put them in this world, to make them alive? It's a very good argument. For that reason, he felt so strongly, I guess no one was listening, that to make a statement, he blew himself up with that intention. So the people are, everybody asks the question, so how do you get consent of the unborn? So how do you go about this? Is there a way? And based on his philosophy, you can't bring, no one was ever born with their consent. And then, so no one, there shouldn't be any life on earth. So he's routing for a complete obliteration for every human being in the planet, essentially, because no one initiated their birth. It's everybody's, their parents' decision to bring them in the world, not theirs. Okay, so and now the truth is, it's consistent with the Talmud. The Talmud says, "Bal karcha chatachai," against you will you live. However, if the soul would be throwing a temper tantrum when God drags this and sends the soul into a body, then it wouldn't be a good match. Then it would be terrible. Life wouldn't work out. So when the sages say, against your will you live, it has a much deeper meaning. Of course, the soul agrees to come out in a body. It's not against its will. We agree to come. We're actually enthusiastic about it. However, it's called against your will because what God does to convince the soul to go down in the body is it tickles the soul with an illumination that comes from the source of the body. Since the body is sourced in God's essence that the soul is not connected to when the soul is in heaven, the soul is connected to God's radiance, to God's light, not to the essence. So when God wants to convince the soul to go down in the body, he allows the soul a little droplet, so to speak. He gives like a little mist of the essence. And when the soul feels that, the pleasure and the delight is irresistible. And the soul says, where can I get more of that? And God says, in the body. So the soul is kind of seduced down to the body. So it goes willfully. But why is it called against its will? It goes against its will because that experience of the loftiness of the body is completely outside of the arena of the soul. It's like that. It's not that the soul is processing a choice that it's making because it can choose. It's irresistible. That delight that God shows the soul of the essence of God, it doesn't belong to the soul at all. It belongs completely to the soul. The soul can't choose it with its, in a sense, free will. It's being pushed. It's the same way it says by the Jewish people at Sinai. God held a mountain over their head. So one way of understanding is he compelled them to take the Torah. But in Hasidism, we have a much deeper interpretation. He didn't force us with a gun. We didn't receive the Torah at gunpoint. He made it irresistible. But God made it. He didn't allow us to. He intoxicated us with his love. God drew close to us, and we felt him, and we could not say no at the moment. But it wasn't fair. It's like someone deciding to marry someone because they're just irresistible, and then they have second thoughts because they realize that they were ensnared in this. This person was extremely, extremely, what do you call it? Extremely charming, and you got lost for his charm. God made himself so charming then that we could not say no. And that's why it's called against our will. In the same way, when the soul goes down in the body, it's called against the will. But it is willful. So this guy has his answer. Every soul does consent, does sign on the agreement. So really, if he would have listened to this class, then he would not have to go through this. He would still be alive today, and it would be great. What a shame. In any case, so we do give consent, but it's still called against our will. Because it's not like a calculated will. That's what he's saying over here. The soul feels the quality of the body, which comes from the source of the soul. The root of the body is above the root of the soul. And that's why the soul wants to enliven the body. This that the sages say. Against your will you live. So why is this called against the will? This is with the will. Since the will of the soul to enliven the body is not because the soul comes to a understanding that that there's something great to come down into the body. The soul, by the soul itself, seeing the body and the constrictions of the body and the darkness of the body, the soul is horrified, and it would never, ever come close with a 10-foot pole to the body. The only reason the soul comes to the body is because God reveals to it not the body, the root to where the body is connected to, the shoresh, the divine highest source. And that is what the soul wants. And that's how God is like dangling that and tricking the soul down into the body. And that's why it's called against the will. It's called a seduction. God seduces the soul into the body. Because it feels the root of the body. It senses, the soul senses the source of the body. And that's why it's called that it is compelled. It is coerced. Against your will, you live. Now we can say, so we have that concept. Now the Rebbe takes it deeper. This that the soul feels the root of the body. Even though feeling the essence is something that really, in essence, the soul shouldn't have any capacity to be able to feel. If the soul is a being of light, and the body is rooted in essence, the soul shouldn't even have the ability to taste that. It's like in a complete different dimension that we even know. So how can the soul even feel it? What gives the soul the ability to sense something that's totally outside? That is when we say it's not a different frequency. It's absolutely removed. It's the essence to the light is. So how can even the neshama even feel this? Now, how do we know? And again, it's not. Meaning, it's not shaykh to the neshama. Meaning, it's not relatable to the soul. And how do we know that? Like it's understood from the very idea that we just said earlier, that this will, although the soul wants it, it's considered against the will of the soul, which means based on the soul's calculations, it would never decide to make this decision. There is a foreigner that's pushing it. How is it pushing it? By making it irresistible. But there's the foreign meaning, it's the body that's pulling the soul, not the soul that's choosing the body. The body is in a sense manipulating the soul to come down to create it, because the body flashes to the soul the source of where the body comes from. But if that's the case, the big question may come, how can even the soul even feel that? And the reason for that is in order that the soul should have a desire to go down and alive in the body, that itself, the root of the source of the body is downloaded into the neshama. Even though on her own, even the soul in its most highest root, even if you trace the soul all the way back to its most sublime, godly, infinite source in the divine light, the soul still does not have a relationship to the essence. So from the soul's state of being, it shouldn't respond, it shouldn't react. But what happens? God downloads into the soul while the soul is in heaven. He imbues the soul with essence. In other words, we can put it this way: souls that are in heaven and they're not on the waiting line to come down in a body, they're not in the bullpen warming up, are creatures of light. They're happy with light. They're satisfied with light. They think about light. They don't even know that there's anything beyond that light. Their excitement is so about the greatness of God's light. They know of God, but they know all of God's super qualities. But the very substance of the essence, no clue. When the souls are in the bullpen, getting ready, when God chooses them, ready to send them down in the body, He gives them. He downloads into them the root of the body. And therefore, so the soul doesn't have a connection to this level. But now that the soul gets it's almost like God is impregnating the soul with, sometimes it says in Kabbalah, that a person has a certain capacity, spiritual capacity, and when you use and utilize all your capacity and you hit the ceiling of your capacity, if you're very worthy, for example, the Alter Rebbe says it regarding a Beinoni. A Beinoni is people that are considered average, which means they don't have the ability in their soul to become a tzaddik. As it's explained in Tanya, a very lofty level of tzaddik. So what can happen is by a person doing whatever they can and already and does and tries to fulfill the next stage, to move on to the next stage, to be the tzaddik, and they're not able to. So God hitches onto them. He hitches onto them a extra battery. That means he hooks up to this soul a soul of another tzaddik. It's called an impregnation. God impregnates into this soul a higher soul, and that releases more horsepower to the soul, or more tzaddik power in this case. So now the soul gets a much greater expansiveness and capacity to what he had before. Similar to that is what he's saying over here. When souls in order to seduce the soul to go into the body, God downloads a certain download, which is above and beyond the source and the source of the source and the source of the source and the source of the soul. And yet he imbues that. And what's that? That's the essence from where God chooses the body, and that's called the root of the body. And that goes into the soul. And once the root of the body shines in the soul, now even though that hasn't in the beginning, it's in this state, you'll say, "Whoa, hold it." Once it's downloaded, and the soul receives this higher experience, so then why is it called against its will? Now the soul has been upgraded, its capacity has grown, and now it can feel, and now it can have such a will. The answer is, just like every time a person gets when they do a transplant and they give a person a new kidney from someone else, it takes a while for the body to process that kidney. You hope the body does not reject it, and that's important. But even not rejecting doesn't mean that the body's comfortable with it yet. It takes a while until you break into it. So the soul, and that happens also when a Benoni gets a soul of a tzaddik, they're confused for a little while. It takes them a while until they embrace that extra power and it becomes part of their identity. So when the soul is in heaven and it suddenly gets, boom, it gets that, a download of essence into it, and then suddenly the body smells so good to it. You know, before that, I would never even look at the body, but suddenly it's like going right down there. It like why? Because it only has a few droplets of essence. The body's got the real juice. So that's what it's only now, but it's called forcing because it has never really assimilated and become part of the soul. It's like the soul, it's like an outside force that's compelling. Before the soul comes down into the body. So, but here's what happens. Once that empowerment drops into the soul, now that makes the soul a vessel to be able to completely tune into the body and join the place where the body is connected. And that the soul should be have the capacity to receive from that place. Which that's going to be really only revealed in the time of the resurrection. So it's basically like stages. If a soul, so here's put it this way. If God would not bother in getting the consent of the soul, and instead he would just drag the soul down because he's God, or impose upon the soul to go down in the body, and the soul really doesn't want to go, but it's going to be going because God is forcing it and making it in a body. Two things we would lose. Number one, it wouldn't be a good match. There would be a lot of tension in a person's life, much more than we have now. Because every day the soul would quit. And we would have to, like, the soul would lock itself in a room and it would not want anything to do with the body, based on the body's vulgar behavior. And the soul would say, I'm not dealing with you anymore. You're impossible, I'm done. So one reason why the soul needs to be happy and want the body. But there's another reason. If the soul would be forced into the body, then the soul would have never been treated to this download. That would mean that God would not have, then the soul, even if it would do Torah mitzvahs in the body, the soul would never become a vessel to the essence where the body is connected to. The soul needs a little injection of some of those cells of the essence, so that once it goes into a body, it can click with the body, absorb the body, and absorb also the body's source, which is the essence of God. And thereby making the soul a vessel for ultimate connection together with the body for the ultimate bond with the essence of Hashem. It's related to the idea that anything we need to do and accomplish in our life that takes our work, first we need to be given a jump start from above. God has to give you a little bit of that. So that's exactly what happens over here. God first initiates by giving the soul a gift that doesn't have any relationship to the soul. He gifts it with a few platelets, if you might say, from the body, or a few cells. Meaning, it's not physical. It's the spiritual source of the soul, of the body, gets downloaded in the soul. It's a foreign entity at this point. Therefore, when it causes the soul to get an interest in the body, it's considered against the will of the soul, because it's against the natural will of the soul. It's like someone convincing you to do something that you're really not, but they're like hyping it up so much, and you're going along with them. So this is the kind of the idea. There is some excitement that now is like, it's like an outside force, but that itself, by that being there already planted in the soul, it helps the soul now adapt to the body, and also not just adapt to the lowliness of the body, but also adapt to the godliness of the body, so that the soul too can become a recipient and enable for the soul to be able to be connected to where the body is connected. So the al yedei agil d'shaysh goshemei b'neshama kom yidas lamata. Hinasis kamay keli. The neshama becomes that. The soul now becomes a vessel lahagilui d'shayrish aguf, to the revelation of the source of the body. Shemeir boy achakach, which is going to be illuminated afterwards al yedei avaydasa b'aguf, which will only come, of course, if the soul does work with the body. If the soul allows the body to take the soul for a ride with the body's narcissistic desires, then the soul is not benefiting at all from the body. It's actually only being abused, and it's only suffering immensely. It's only when the soul comes down in the body and the soul is able to gain mastery of the body and bring the body to serve God and refine the body, then the body opens itself up to the soul and allows the soul to gain the quality of what the body has. But in order even for that to happen, the soul needs to be preconditioned. And without the preconditioning, it wouldn't work. Because the vastness of where the body is connected to is so vastly higher than where the soul is connected to, that there would be no ability for them to even attach. But this, that the soul is able to connect to where the body is connected to, is because it became acclimated to begin with. And how did it become acclimated to begin with? How did it become acclimated to begin with? Because before it comes down, God opens up and treats the soul to something of the body. So now, similar to this is also going to be with lights and vessels in general. Because remember, the same, whatever is with soul and body, God created the universe to match. We think that soul and body, we discussed last week, is at least the body and the physical world is the last and at the bottom of a whole chain-like reaction of worlds. So everything in the physical mirrors and reflects the spiritual. But we learned over here something absolutely stunning last week. The Rebbe says it's completely opposite. The entire spiritual order God created to match the final product, which is the body. So once Hashem desired the body and wanted the soul to come down in the body, and made it in a way that that in order for the soul to come down to the body willfully, it needs to treat the soul he has to initiate the soul. It has to orient the soul through this initiation process, which happens in the bullpen when the soul is getting ready to go down in a body. It's being treated with, which that itself makes the soul into a vessel that when it will work in the when it will work the body, it will then attain that connection to where the body is connected. So just like it is with body and soul, this is mirror and reflects also in the entire cosmic order. That the reason why the energies don't want to go into containers. Because when an energy goes into a container, it has to schlep along a container. Understand something? An energy, once it goes into a container, gets constricted by the container. Which energy will want to go into a container? Quite to the contrary, energy always likes to go back to its source. The fact that energy, the lights, go down to the vessels, the same thing happens. God allows the lights to sense the source of the vessel. And because the lights sense the source of the vessel, they're willing to compromise to go down in the vessel. How do the lights sense the source of the vessel? Hashem treats the lights to a download of the place from where the vessels come. That entices the lights to be willing to constrict themselves in vessels. Which then later, when the lights are in the vessels, it causes the lights to be elevated truthfully to where the vessels come. Because after all, they are enhancing the vessels. So it's a two-way street. The vessels then pick up the lights. So the same system of body and soul is also in the heavens above. And also, if it's in lights and vessels, it will also translate as the same thing between Jews and non-Jews. So again, then we bring it back down here into the world. So what is that? How does that work? And the same as with lights and vessels. This that through the lights coming into the vessels. We know when a light goes into the vessels, eventually the lights gain because the source of the vessels is now drawn into the lights as well. But how does that happen? All of this is made possible because it's sensed in the lights even before they go down in the vessels, they get a little preview. That preview, before they're even in vessels, they get a little teaser from the source of where the vessels come, and that's what convinces them to go down in the vessels. They get a little treat of the shayrish hakelim of the root of the vessels. And we can say, so now the Rebbe takes it and he says, so now we take it back to Sfira Sa'omer, to the counting of the Omer. Umatan Torah and the giving of the Torah. What happens in the 49 days leading up to the giving of the Torah? God liberated our souls from Egypt on Passover. And that happened by the time of the Exodus, but it reoccurs every year. Passover, God, Pesach, Hashem liberates our souls, takes us out of the darkness of the body, the darkness of the klipa. The soul is freed like a bird that was trapped. But then what happens immediately after that? We don't continue tripping out on spirituality. After Pesach, party's over. God sends us right back down to the trenches to refine the body and the animal soul. Then after the result of that, we come and we receive the Torah by Shavuot, which is again a spiritual high. So how does this work? So it's like this. Why would the soul agree once it's been liberated already from the constrictions of the body? Once you had a Passover experience, a leaping experience, why in the world would you go back down to deal with the dark elements of the human psyche. It's what we're doing. Sfirat Omer every day is supposed to face a certain darkness, a certain impure part of your psyche, and cleanse it and purify. But why would you want to do that? You're already enlightened. You want to run away from all of that, not peek into the dark crevices of your dark side. So why are we going back to our animal soul? Obviously, the soul is willing to do that. Why? So let's see. When this, ultimately it will be a big gain, because a big gain will come out. What will come out? Because when the godly soul refines the animal soul, it's explained many times that a human being is able to go on a trip, and they're able to climb a mountain or go to a certain distance in a slow pace and a very limited space. But when they hop onto a horse, the horse can take them to a much greater distance, much faster, and climb a higher, steeper mountain, and so on and so forth. Because a four-legged animal has the ability to do that, which the person cannot do. So it explains the same thing, that our soul needs our animal body and our animal consciousness to reach the highest levels. But the soul has to ride on the, just like if the horse is dragging the person by its tail, it's not good. It's very not good if a human gets caught and hooked by mistake onto the tail of a horse, and the horse goes running and he drags the human. That was type of torture they used to do to people. Horrible. But when the human being actually gets onto the animal, and he's the one who directs the animal and is riding, then the animal becomes the servant of the human, and together they can go places that the human couldn't go on his own. Our godly soul is the human, our animal soul is the animal. If the animal soul calls the shots in our lives, that means a person has no self-control on his or her animalistic desires. Poor soul is being dragged by the tail of the animal. And that's not a pretty sight for the soul. And there's no gain. And it's just pure, utter misery. That's why it's incumbent upon us to get mastery over our evil impulses, our animal self, and so forth. And again, we do that during the time of Sfiras HaOmer. That's the time to rein in the animal. The natural but what happens? We know that our animal soul can lift our soul up higher than where our soul can go on its own. Now, all of this is reflected in the story of Yonason saying to David. Lo Yonason, Yonason says to David, which we said David, remember, is reflecting the soul, because David is Sfirat HaMalchut. Malchus is the source of all souls. He says to him, tomorrow is going to be a great big party, which is a great spiritual union, but instead of you coming to the party, I want you to go into the darkness. You're going to be absent from the party, which reflects the idea that the soul steps away from God's party, from God's table, royal table, and it goes down to the dark place. And what does he tell King David to go? He says, go down and lay low for 3 days and sit next to the stone, the moving stone, which we interpreted in the earlier classes. It's referring to, he's tending the Shekhinah, which means on a great level, it means the cosmic Shekhinah. On a personal level, it means every soul. We're told by God, go down, and I know you're not going to be in a spiritual place. Instead, you're going to go to the stone. What's your stone? That's your body. In a very dark place. So, and that's called Yipaked Moishavecha. Your seat is going to be vacant. Which seat? The soul was once part of the divine, of the supernal choir. The soul once stood amongst the angelic voices above the angels, singing to God like all day long. Now it's going to be you're vacant, and the other souls are going to say, "Where's Johnny? He's not here anymore." Went down. So it means your seat will be vacant, because you're going to deal with the Karas world. Oh, but what happens? We know that only through the rectification of the animal soul do we come to Sinai. We cannot go from Egypt, from Passover, from the Red Sea, onto Mount Sinai. You have to have a 49-day purification process in between. And it's only via the animal, through the animal, the soul gets a face-to-face encounter with God, which is much higher even than what happened when we went out of Egypt. So nimshach ba'agiloi the Matan Torah. So now the neshama is going to gain the revelation of Matan Torah mitzad ma'alos habirurim, because it is because of the hidden potential that exists within the crass and dark things. When we elevate them, including our own animal soul, that brings our soul up to the greatest heights. Like we said, the horse can elevate the human to heights where the human can't go on his own. And now Sif Dalad, like we said before in chapter 4. But fine, this is the way it is. But what is to assure the success of that? What is to assure that the soul will go down in the body and then will be capable to navigate the body, control the body? And not only that, but bring the body along through refinement into its relationship with God. What is to guarantee that? So the Rebbe says, just like with body and soul in general, before the soul goes down in the body, God flashes the source of the body to the soul. And that kind of creates the incentive for the soul to go down. The same thing is by Yetzias Mitzrayim. By Yetzias Mitzrayim, when we experienced the Exodus and God liberated the soul, that served as an empowerment. God was then flashing to the soul the great heights it's going to get when it's going to reach Sinai via the rectification of the lowly world. Because this descent to go down to refine the animalistic traits of the animal soul comes after and through the revelation of that happened when we went out of Egypt. And through the revelation of the Exodus from Egypt, nirgashba, it is felt and sensed in the soul, gam lifnei hayerida, even before its descent, ma'alos habirurim. God gives the soul a whiff, a smell, a little whiff of that delicious aroma that is related to the sparks of holiness that are after they're elevated. But God allows the soul a little shmek tabik, a little smell of, what is it called, snuff, so that it will want to go through with this. So just like it is individually, it's also the cosmic story. When the Jewish people went out of Egypt, that revelation gave us a little teaser of after we're going to elevate the world, but we're going to have to go down to elevate. So again, the quality of the birur. Where did we have a little taste of the great quality of what's hidden in the material world? Where do we see that when we went out of Egypt, we got a little teaser of the physical world? The answer was we went out with a great wealth. That means that at that moment, God gave them wealth. We know that those wealth that they went out of Egypt was really spiritually and physically. Physically, it was extracted from Egypt. And spiritually, it contained sparks of holiness that were stuck in Egypt. All that went out. Now, the real experience of these sparks of holiness is going to be only the days of Mashiach. And maybe to some degree when they received the Torah, they had like some of that light. But now they got a little taste of it, which served as an enticement and as a what would it be, a incentive to get the soul down to go do the avoda of cleansing the body. He's going to show us now in chapter 12 how with this it will explain all the questions we had in the beginning of the discourse. Remember, we learned that there's a repetition in this verse, spiritual in the inner content. It says Yonason says to David, tomorrow is Chodesh, tomorrow is the new moon. You're going to be absent because your seat will be vacant. Sorry, you're going to be remembered because your seat will be vacant. And then I'm gonna check with my father to get a sense if he's angry at you, and then we're gonna make a sign. You meanwhile you go down and hide 3 days in the field, sit next to the rock. That's what he tells him. Vishilashta, you're gonna be. So we asked at the beginning of the discourse. Seems to be a repetition of the same theme over here. Why? Because what's the idea of you will be remembered because your seat will be vacant? What did we learn at the beginning of the discourse? We learned that through the descent of the soul, through the descent of the Shekhinah, through the descent of Malchut, of the Shekhinah, of the soul, into the darkness, that's the meaning of your seat being vacant. You're not by the royal table. You're not by God's table. Or for us today's days, the Jewish people are not by our Father's table in Jerusalem. Instead, we're in the diaspora. We're scattered around the entire world already for 2,000 years. That's a great sacrifice for the soul. That's the absence. But what do we say to the soul? You will be remembered. And what do we learn? The wording of remembered means you will have intimacy. You will experience a union with the highest lights as a result of your absence. So it's this. What theme is it? The theme is that by going down, you'll be elevated. It's worth it. It's worth it to go down because ultimately, it's worth it the separation, the temporary separation for a much higher union. Because in the end, you're going to experience the ultimate great light. So, but hold it. Now let's go back to the first words. How did we interpret it? Vayoma Lo Yonason leDavid machar chodesh. That Yonason says to David. Now we learned earlier. I'm not repeating at length all of this because we learned it all in the earlier classes. That we said that Yonatan represents the first 3 letters of God's name, Yud Kei Vav, and even Nasan is Hey, because Nasan is Hey Ba'aka, whatever that meant. I'm giving already a 4th class and I still didn't do my research to figure out what Hey Ba'aka means. Okay, sorry. So the Yonasan, the Yud Kei Vav, and someone actually sent me this week a message that he tried putting it into AI because he listened to my class and he tried putting it into AI what Hey Ba'aka means, and he didn't get the right answer. He sent it to me. It was struggling. AI did not figure that out. So AI is not yet a certified Kabbalist. It's getting there, not yet. So Yonatan, Yud Kei Vav Nasan, and David is Malchut, we said, when it goes down. Yonasan saying, the Yoma Lo Yonasan, Yonasan speaking to David means a download from the higher lights into Malchut. But hold it, we said that's the meaning of Inifkadata, you will be remembered. Same idea twice. And the answer is, the Yoma Lo Yonasan is a free download. It's like they give you in a company, whenever they want to tease you to subscribe to something. They give you a free trial. Come on in. It's a free trial. You don't have to pay anything. Just give us your credit card, and you can call us to cancel. If you forget to cancel, we'll charge you every month $39.99. I'm sure you're going to forget. Who's going to remember to cancel it? So you look at your bill 6 months later. Oi! First they seduce you with a free, but it's an old trick. God does the same trick with the soul. Come on in. It's great. Give you it's free. And that's what happens. Yonasan says to David is a download of great light, free of charge, for the soul, that it should be willing to take on the very, very treacherous journey down into a body and to work the dark world. Then it says, however, when you're going to be successful, then if kadata, you're going to be remembered, then that already means it's yours for keeps. You're going to earn it. First, you get a tease first, and that's Vayomer Lo Yonason. So again, in order, through this that your seat will be vacant, even if Kadata will be the remembrance, while first there has to be a download, that first has to be a flow of a Vayomer Lo Yonason. Yonason first needs to empower it, give the neshama the power to go down by giving it a taste of the sparks of holiness that it will. So remember, the Rebbe Marash said that Vayomer Lo Yonason is similar to the infusion of that what happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf. Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf, meaning going out of Egypt and the splitting of the sea, God didn't charge us for that. It was an unearned godly experience. It was similar to Vayomer Lo Yonason, the Yonason giving to David, a great imbuing of divine light. But what does this do? Nirgash. What this causes is that the soul feels, King David feels, or the soul feels, the Shekhinah feels, whoever you're going to pin the same idea on, all of them feel that what? Even before we descend, Mailas Habirurim. We feel and we sense the quality of the birur, of what's going to happen when we elevate the body, of all the sparks of holiness that are embedded in lowly things. And this is the meaning. You will be remembered, because your seat will be vacant. Now, it should have said you'll be remembered. We said earlier, remember in the beginning we said that the great yichud, the great light that comes is because the soul, remember in the beginning of the Maimer we said, this is going back all the way to the beginning, many weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, because we had Lag Bomer in the middle, so it was 5 weeks ago. We said that the reason why when we go absent, we then achieve a higher, deeper connection is because, remember we said that you can't draw the attention of the king only by doing something amusing. You bring a parrot before the king. We spoke about that. And the only thing that amuses God is when something becomes nothing. So when the soul is willing to sacrifice itself completely, go out of its own well-being, and go down and leave the party for the sake of God's will, that speaks to God himself. And that attracts Hashem to the Nishim. That was his initial explanation. The bittul, in order to reach the v'nifkadata, in order to reach the union, the yichud, which remember we said, I'm just pulling you back to the beginning of the discourse, that in order to have a union, it has to really originate in Keser. Because remember we said that in order for the Chassan and the Kala to have a union, for the Ze'er Anpin and the Malchus to unify, they have to get the crown from the mother. The mother gave him a crown on the day of his wedding. So he must get the crown from Bina, and Bina is just really grabbing the crown from Keser. She's passing the crown down. From Keser, it's going through Bina, and it's going down to the how do you get to Keser? The only thing that impresses Keser, which is the Ein Sof, is Bittul. That's the reason we explained, V'nif Kadata, you'll be remembered because your seat is vacant. Seat is vacant means Bittul. So the Bittul will make you, enable you to have the Yichud, the unity. But he rejected that pirush. Why did he reject it? Because he says, according to that, the value is not in the vacancy. The value is in the Bittul, not the vacancy. And we even gave a cool example to that. If I were to show you a video of someone disappearing into thin air, you have the person, and the person disappears into thin air. That would be like, wow, Right? If I made a show that way, I can show you a video. You'd be, well, that's really neat. This guy was here. He didn't go anywhere. He didn't go into he just disappeared. Something became nothing. That's awesome. But what happens if I cut the video? And I cut the part that the person is there and they become nothing. And all I show you is the nothing. The last 5 seconds of the video, that's nothing there. There's nothing to be impressed by nothing. The only impression over here is that something became, if you're saying that God is amused by something unusual, that something that usually takes itself seriously, that works for itself all the time, nullifies itself to do God's will. So it's the nullification that's valuable, not the nothingness. Then why are you emphasizing an empty chair? You should emphasize that the person walked out of the room. It's not saying you're going to be remembered because you walked out of the room. It says you're going to be remembered because your seat will be vacant. The vacancy is nothingness. Why is nothingness valuable? But now we understand that the quality of the soul going down in the body is not that the soul is doing something awesome. That's what we said was the first 2 explanations of a soul coming to a body. That when the soul comes in the body, the soul has to do it. The soul has to show its ultimate loyalty to God. That's a quality of the soul. That's not the ultimate greatness. The ultimate reason you're coming into a body because the body has something, not to show something at the soul. What does the body have? The body has God's choice. God chose the body. And what did the body do to deserve God's choice? Nothing. Because there's nothing valuable to the body. Absolutely nothing. When God is choosing the body and making that choice, it's because he's giving it value because he's choosing it. Remember, that was the whole point we were learning. So the body is really nothing. In other words, what makes the body such a connection to God is because it has no value and God can exercise his free choice and he's choosing the body. And that's the ultimate gain that the soul gets, is that the soul gets the quality of the body, which the body is chosen. And the body is chosen not because the body became nothing. The body never did anything to become, it just is nothing. There's nothing impressive there. And yet God chooses. So here the value is in the yipaked, in the pure nothingness, in the vacancy itself. If the quality would have been the soul's quality, then the quality would be that the soul is sacrificing itself to go down in a body, that the soul is nullifying its will for God's will. Then the value would not be in the absent chair. The value would be in the fact that the person is leaving the room and not going to sit down in his seat. It's a beautiful royal table with all the delicacies and all of the lights, and you're turning around to do something for the king. Wow. But then that's not, the value is not in the vacancy. Who has a value in the vacancy? That's the value of the body. The ultimate gain of the soul is not that the soul gains because it shows how great she is. The ultimate depth of the greatness of the soul is that she devotes herself to the body, and God chose the body. God chose the physical earth and our bodies to express him. That's Yipaked Mashevach. So how the Rebbe tore this mimer apart deeper and deeper until he was able, and only the Rebbe reveals it. From all of Chassidus, only why? Because the Rebbe is Malchus. And Malchus is connected to the Yesha Gashmi, to the physical world. This secret is the ultimate secret of Mashiach. This is like crazy. The value of nothingness. Not becoming nothing, just nothingness itself. From this words it implies, the relationship of the Yipaked Lenevkadita, is not because of the nullification of Yipaked, not because the bittul is attractive to God, bittul meaning the nullification. The nothingness itself, that has value. Canal Sif Aleph, like we said in Sif Aleph. Because the ultimate elevation of the soul through coming in the body, huloi, is not it's not that because of this, it helps the soul reveal what the soul is all about. The soul is a master of surrender. The soul is a master of bittul. And only in a body can the soul show you how devout she is, how surrendered she is. If that's what it would be, then it would never be about the body. It would always be about the soul. And then the soul would not have to ever come back down in a body. That's not where the ultimate marriage between us and God is. The ultimate marriage is not because we extract the quality of the soul. The ultimate quality is God chooses something, and that's the body. It's just about God, and it's just his choice. Now, what's interesting is the body is total opposite of the soul. If the soul is a master of becoming nothing, of showing how devout, how surrendering herself, and the body is the ultimate substance of beingness. Total opposite. And that's what makes precisely the body so unattractive. It's so selfish. And yet when you dismiss the selfishness and you just do with the body what God's want, that's the choice. God choose that body. It's not because this reveals the idea of the neshama, which is bittul. It's the body itself. Kanal Sifei, like we said in the 5th chapter. So now this leads us back to the nefkadeta. This happens through the yipaked, the vacancy itself. And the interesting thing, it says you will be remembered. It could have, remember, we learned also that it could have used a different word. It could have said kinechsar moshavecha. Your place will be lacking. What does it say yipaked? Which yipaked also means remembered and also means unity. So the Rebbe said that means that in the yipaked itself is already the unity. Not that after the yipaked will come the unity, will come the intimacy. That's why you use in the vacancy, you use a word yipaked. But now we'll understand. Yipaked ugam aloshem v'nefkadeta. Yipaked, your seat will be vacant. Also is from the same word as v'nefkadeta. The noisel is actually yipaked mevil in nefkadeta. Not only does the yipaked bring to the nefkadeta, gam be yipaked atzma yesh in nefkadeta. The yipaked itself has the nefkadeta. Can I say why? Because through this, that the yipaked moshevecha, but al yedei shachad v'yom Lo Yonason. We said that why does the soul go down? It goes down because God tickles it with the revelation before that of the source of the body. Nirgash. So since the soul is going down with that stimulation, nirgash gam b'yerida atzma ma'ila sabirudim. What that does is that even when you're down in the trenches, mining, you can sense the quality of what you're mining for. That means like this. If the soul, going back to what we said earlier, would have been forced down into the body without the soul agreeing to it by getting a foretaste of it, then while the soul would be in the trenches, it would be miserable. And it might know that one day it would be rewarded, but it wouldn't appreciate. It wouldn't sense the reward now. But since it got a taste a little bit, so it can smell these sparks. Again, obviously, this is in a very spiritual, deep level in the soul. And it already has a pleasure of the sparks while it's doing, which ultimately these sparks are connecting it to the essence of God, which is what the intimacy is all about eventually. The intimacy, essence to essence, which is really there in the spark. It can smell it already in the sparks that it's, while it's in the refinery, it can already smell the finished product. And that's why, while it's in the absence, it's already in the intimacy. It can sing during the absent state as well. It can feel in the absence the intimacy already, the ultimate stage of union that's going to happen as a result. If it would go down blindly without having that foretaste, then that experience would be completely futuristic. It would have nothing to do with now. But as we said earlier, since the Vayoma Lo Yonason, you start with Yonason giving David a shot in the arm. Of what? Of the ultimate light of what's going to come as a result of its union, of its going down and refinement of the dark world. Then even while it forgoes and goes down, it senses every moment in the darkness. So in a sense, we can sense all the revelations of the future already now, if we are sensitive. Because it's really there already, and because we once tasted it. So, the nergish gamba yirida atzma mailas abirudim. Eloshe ikaragilu. Now, of course, the main revelation is going to be after 100, after Tchias HaMesim, after the resurrection. It's going to happen after the descent. The Yapakid Mashiach. Machar Chodesh. Tomorrow will be Chodesh. Tomorrow will be the Vinifkadata. But since the Torah chooses to use the word, when is Yapakid? When does he tell him Yapakid? On Erev Rosh Chodesh. That's when you should. That means Erev Rosh Chodesh means currently the time before Mashiach, the time of the absence of the light. Yet in the absence itself, it uses a word that the Torah deliberately chooses a word of absence that also means intimacy, because in the absence, you can already smell the aroma. You can smell the coffee. You can smell the brew of the ultimate light already now. Similar to this is regarding the Chiddush, the renewal of Israel, of Knesset Yisrael, the ensemble of Israel at the time of the future redemption. They're going to be renewed like the moon. Even on Erev Rosh Chodesh. What does that mean? In the last seconds before the redemption, which is right now. The last seconds before the redemption. Me'ir, we're beginning to smell the coffee. We're able to sense a little bit already of the revelation of the redemption. Rebbe is saying amazing things over here. The Rebbe said this already in 1968. He's saying we're already smelling the redemption. Because even on Erev Rosh Chodesh, you can get the Rosh Chodesh intimacy already. Rosh Chodesh represents the redemption, because the sun and the moon will come together. God and Israel will be together. But on Erev Rosh Chodesh, we have a taste of it already. Why? Spiritually, number one, you can learn such a discourse. Gilui Pnimius HaTorah. Secrets like this that have never been revealed are now revealed. In a manner that everybody has access to it. Everybody has access to it. No more, whole system to get into the Kabbalist school. Today, all Kabbalist yeshivas and schools are online. And also regarding the great wealth. See that it's going to be in the Gil. That what? The Rebbe says, we don't have to now be in the poverty of exile. On the contrary, the Jewish people now can already live in great abundance. Barchava, meaning with broadness, va'adla shiris, and even including wealth. And this brings us instantly to the redemption. Then two things are going to be perfect. Shatoivatu mishpas harba. That goodness, that the good, two things are going to be in the days of Mashiach. The goodness, that means physical blessings. The goodness is going to be so much. And all the lights are going to be available like dust. Definitely regarding spiritual matters. Mola Aretz Deas Hashem. The world will be filled with divine knowledge. Kemayim layam machasim. Like water covers the sea. With this, we conclude this awesome discourse. All right, everyone, we should merit already all this great bracha and all this great light. May it be right now.